Hello and welcome to Take Six. I am streaming executive producer Thomas Mates, filling in for Julie Broughton today. She has the day off. She should return tomorrow. In the meantime, we are covering two big stories today. One of the big things we are looking at is that Casey Anthony has reemerged online on social media over the weekend. She started up a TikTok account and is promoting a new newsletter that she is putting out. We'll check in with News 6 investigator Mike DeForest for a little bit of background on how we got here and what this all could mean. But also we're taking a look at the chance for some severe weather this week. This Wednesday, it's gorgeous right now, I should say, but this Wednesday we could see a little bit of a turn, and it could be worse for some people a little bit further to our north. For all the details on that, we turn now to our weather expert, News 6 meteorologist David Nazario. David, how you doing?
Doing good, Thomas. It's nice to say we're so back. How are you, my friend?
Not too bad, not too bad. You know, it's Monday, we're here, but like I said, it's gorgeous outside right now, but you know, it's nothing good can last, right?
No, with weather, there's always ups and downs, there's troughs and ridges, and I will say you're absolutely right. Saturday, and especially yesterday, was fantastic. I had the pleasure of doing the night side broadcast yesterday, and both Eric and I were taking in just how awesome the weekend was wrapping up, and we were in store for a solid Monday, and it is happening. Let's take you outside right now. We'll take a look at the infrared satellite shot. You can see a little bit of high cloud up there dissipating as it comes down further to the south over central Florida, Jacksonville, Gainesville, maybe seeing some patchy upper level clouds, but the rest of us, you can see that cooler air still sinking off to the south, providing us with a pretty spectacular start to the work week. But with what goes up, something's always got to come down. And so with that being said, let's get into this. This is what we're currently tracking right now. This is our severe risk out there. And I know there's a lot going on this map, but what I'm trying to do is show the progression of everything that's going on, and I'll take you in for a bird's eye view in a second. For tomorrow, we're looking at probably our first ever severe weather outbreak of the 2025 year, more or less ringing in the meteorological start to spring. Now, per the calendar, spring isn't quite here yet. We're in the midst of what's called transition season, where we're starting to pull out of our winter pattern, the bona fide winter snow setup, where we had snowstorms, winter systems blasting through the central and northern U.S. We had one down here in January. Well, that could be a thing of the past. And you look at your day 3 there on the right-hand side, we now have that level 1 risk for some isolated bouts of severe weather into our viewing area, which I personally am very glad to see. Storm Prediction Center is on the ball. This is a graphic that I've been pulling up the last couple days. Every time I had an opportunity to step in front of the green screen, I was mentioning to our viewers, we got to watch to the north of the I-4 corridor for some new storms that could possibly fire during the warmest part of the day. And it looks like the folks over at Storm Prediction Center are jiving with what we're thinking here in the Pinpoint Weather Center beautifully. So with that being said, let's get into some of the model data, shall we? We'll walk you through this together. We're going to get started with the European model. This is the latest Euro output for our future radar, starting it pretty much later this afternoon. And I'll take you through time here, and you'll watch as that large-scale storm system really rapidly gets underway. First and foremost, though, before I go any further, I want you to note what happens to our winds here in Florida. If you look down over the Central Florida Peninsula particularly, our winds have now completely backed up, and they're coming out of the south and east off the western Atlantic, going right up against that storm system as it gets going over the deep south, the Texarkana area, moving into the Mississippi Valley. As you go further through time, you watch as it continues to intensify, the low pressure itself pulling further towards the north into the Midwest and the Great Lakes, but the trailing appendage of that cold front runs face first into all that subtropical / tropical warm moist air that's here in Central Florida. And you can see by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the European model is in full confidence that we will have a line of organized showers and possible stronger storms right along the nose of that colder air. Now, I'll take you over to the GFS. Let's see what the Euro's counterpart is thinking. And we'll go ahead and go further through time, and I'll walk you through it. Same general setup. I'm going to go fast. We don't really worry too much about what's happening to the northwest. We're going to be paying close attention to them as well over on the social medias. But for us here in Central Florida, the GFS is ebbing and flowing with the Euro pretty consistently. And you can see right around 1, if not 2 o'clock. an organized tail of that front moving through Central Florida. And I really want you all out there watching right now to focus on the time. The timing is always critical with these types of systems. And I've noticed that the GFS has kind of trended a little bit slower in terms of the arrival of the leading edge of that cooler air. And the reason I bring that up is if we get even an additional maybe 30 to 45 minutes, upwards of an hour most of daytime warming, sunshine out there across Central Florida, that could pay dividends. And how many of these storms try to buff up a little bit, pique their interest, and try to develop into something more than just a garden variety shower or rain event that we typically see here in Florida. And with that being said, I'll show you why it is I mentioned that. This is going to be our modeled storm energy. I have two different models here, and that's why you'll notice there's shades of green kind of interlaced with shades of maybe sand or tan beige underneath. This is going to be both the GFS and the European model in sync, showing just how much potential energy these storms may have to borrow over the peninsula of Florida, over our viewing area as they come through during the middle portions of the afternoon, which is the warmest part of the day. Usually we don't peak at our high temperature until maybe approximately 12 to 2 p.m. And you look at the timestamp there in the center of the chart, 1 p.m. is what we're looking at in terms of the arrival time. So we will be at the warmest part of the day, and there's going to be a lot of energy and instability out there for these systems to tap into. This is a look at our in-house model. We're finally close enough in time to get a picture of what we have going on to a higher resolution extent. And you can see as the winds begin to transition to that easterly component, here comes the front right on schedule. And I've noticed, and I'll personally testify to this, and I'm waiting for another model to come in to see what that's thinking. Because I'll be honest with y'all, folks, our in-house model has kind of struggled with these events. I've seen it time and time again, especially for the Daytona 500. That's the big one. We were predicting that there could be some rain delays, and our in-house model didn't seem to think so. The high resolution model that I'm waiting for, to come in closer to time so I can see what that's showing for our viewing area, nailed it, knocked it out of the park. So I love to compare the models, see which one's actually working well with what's happening real time, and which one we can more or less kind of not take a second glance at because it might not be doing too well. And I do want to point out, and I'll take in for a closer look, the in-house model is showing, say for instance, near Leesburg, kind of getting into northern Orange County and central Lake County, headed for Sanford, and then to the north of Lakeland and Polk County and Sumter County, we do have some organized cells there, and those are the ones that could try to get a little stronger if the ingredients are in play and the timing is mint like our models are suggesting. Another factor here I'll show you, this is our in-house model, which is going to directly reflect that instability, the energy available for these systems to tap into. We're going to rapidly fast forward to middle of the day on Wednesday. Look at that. These are some pretty impressive values. And that's why I'm a little curious to know why it is our future radar model shows a bit of a lackluster event when we have all this available food, this available fuel source for these thunderstorms to just kind of work their way all the way through our area. And that's why I do believe I'm in full agreement with Storm Prediction Center. We're going to have to watch closely and see what happens that day. We're going to be here actively working. We may be even streaming as well if things are kicking off. And it will also be windy. Don't be surprised if late in the day on Tuesday, as you step outside, and then especially when you start your day on Wednesday, you're feeling a nice blistery breeze out there. I say blistery because it will be warm. Until that front can come through, it's going to be warm air surging across Central Florida. And you can see here, even as early as 9 o'clock, I'll even go back a couple hours. We'll go to 6 a.m. I'm usually already on the road for the gym by 5, 6 in the morning, and you can see anywhere between 20 to 30 mile an hour gusts ahead of this system as we start the day before the sun even comes up on your Wednesday. And that just goes to show how aggravated the overall environment could be as this prepares to get underway. And then from there, I thought this was interesting. As we get closer and closer to the calendar start of spring, Climate Prediction Center is also thinking we will be at about average, if not a large majority of the eastern United States, to include us down here in Central Florida, will be average, if not above average in terms of our temperatures. So is winter over? Is winter finally going to be saying bon voyage and we can welcome in spring/severe weather season full time? Before we close out, here's a look at your pinpoint accurate forecast. We've nudged our rain chances up to about 70% on Wednesday before we get a little bit more of that backhanded whiplash, a small glimpse of winter, and then same song and dance into the weekend. We are back into the 80s with the arrival of our next potential frontal system.
Whew. That is a bit of a roller coaster there. We say
It
that a
is
lot these
definitely.
days, it seems, but it's topsy turvy, a little up and down. But it's best for us all to be prepared for whatever might come. It doesn't seem like we'll get the worst of it, but certainly enough that we want to pay attention.
Absolutely. That's the perfect way to compartmentalize that. Just enough to where you want to keep an eye out, maintain your situational awareness, I always say.
Yeah, be weather aware, as we always say. All right, well, David, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. We know you'll be keeping track of this, and we'll probably see a lot more of you as we get a little closer to Wednesday.
Absolutely, Thomas. Thanks for your time. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Yep. All right, with that, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to be speaking with News 6 investigator Mike DeForest. He is following the reemergence of Casey Anthony on social media. She has made a TikTok account and is promoting a new newsletter. He's taking a closer look at what that is, and of course, he'll give us all the background of who Casey Anthony is and why this is significant. That'll all be coming up in just about 2 minutes. Welcome back to Take 6. The time now is 12:42. I am streaming executive producer Thomas Mates filling in for Julie Broughton. She has the day off. She should return tomorrow. Today we have discovered that Casey Anthony, a well-known figure in Central Florida history, has reemerged online and is promoting a new newsletter. For more on this interesting, unusual perhaps story, we are joined now by News 6 investigator Mike DeForest, the man who knows possibly more than anyone all about the Casey Anthony saga. Mike, how are you doing today?
Doing okay. Yeah, I couldn't believe this when I saw it over the weekend, looking through my social media feed and saw that Casey Anthony had emerged. Keep in mind, I've been covering this saga since 2008 when her daughter Kaylee was first reported missing. Casey Anthony later put on trial for her daughter's murder and acquitted of that crime. She was found guilty of lying to law enforcement. And shortly after her acquittal, she laid low for a little bit. Every now and then we would hear little peeps. She'd show up in a magazine somewhere or someone would spot her. We living in West Palm area. And then most notably, it was about 2-3 years ago, she was featured in a documentary on Peacock talking about her life and her life after her acquittal, and a big part of that was working for one of the private investigators who worked on her case. He not only worked on her case, but also the O.J. Simpson case, and a well-known private investigator. And in this case, she had been working for him doing legal work. She's not an attorney, but working in his office. And now over the weekend, Casey Anthony has emerged first with his TikTok video promoting her new Substack channel. Now, those who aren't familiar, Substack is a subscription-based newsletter. I looked subscriptions for this newsletter from Casey Anthony start at $10 a month. They do have a free option, although it looks like you'll get limited information. But in this new newsletter, Casey Anthony says she's going to be discussing all things about her own life, about her daughter Kaylee. Said she would mention some of the conflicts she's had with her parents, but most notably, she says she's going to be talking about what she calls her work as a quote legal advocate. And now we just wait to see what that means on her new subscription channel.
Yeah, I watched the video this morning. It was posted on March 1st, this past Saturday. I watched the video this morning. It seemed a little rambling, just in the sense that it wasn't the most focused insofar as what she was trying to accomplish. You did mention that she called herself a legal advocate. She said she was interested in reintroducing herself to people. She also talked about some aspects of LGBTQ rights. It wasn't entirely clear what her aim was beyond promoting her new Substack. What did you glean from that beyond those semi-incongruous topics that she covered?
Well, I kind of took it for what it was, is it's a teaser video to get you to go to her Substack channel and presumably pay for a subscription. But I think, too, it seems like a chance to reinvent herself. We live in an era now where whether you are hero or villain, you are able to remanufacture your public perception on social media. And perhaps that is what she's trying to do here. Now, keep in mind, she was arrested and accused of murdering her daughter, Kaylee. Prosecutors sought the death penalty against her. It was during her trial. It was kind of held as a surprise until the very moment it was brought up during opening arguments that despite what prosecutors say, that little Kaylee Anthony was murdered, her defense attorney, Jose Baez, shocked the world who was watching this trial, particularly on the internet. This was one of the very first high-profile criminal cases of the internet era, when her defense attorney gets during opening argument and says, no, Kaylee Anthony wasn't murdered. She drowned accidentally in the family's backyard swimming pool. And it appears that if the jury did not necessarily buy that argument, that the child's death was from an accidental drowning, they at least bought onto the notion that there was not enough evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Casey Anthony murdered her child. So when it comes to the death of Kaylee Anthony, in the law's eyes, she was not guilty. In the public's eyes, quite a different picture. Although Casey Anthony certainly has her supporters, I would say a vast majority of the people who followed this trial closely back about a decade and a half ago still believe that she was responsible for her daughter's death. And so it appears that this attempt reaching out on social media, first via TikTok, and now whatever is to come of this Substack channel, is Casey Anthony's attempt to try to reshape the narrative in her favor, to explain her side of the story with all this, and position herself as what she again calls a quote legal advocate.
Mm-hmm. And I know that, as you said, she's kind of been
I've lost your audio, but I'm trying to listen to you across the room.
sorry.
Thomas.
Here we go.
There we go. Now I can hear what you're asking. Sorry.
I apologize. This mic has some issues sometimes. But as I was saying, Casey Anthony, she's largely been pretty scarce over the past few years since the trial. She, outside of that documentary, she's largely kept to herself and kind of tried to keep a low profile, correct?
Yes, and it appears the little bit that she says in this TikTok video, she talks about how she shot the video in her car for her own privacy. It looks like she's still trying to keep aspects of her life private, and certainly that is one thing that, regardless of how you feel about her, at one point it seemed like nearly everybody in America knew who she was familiar with her case, had a very strong opinion about her. And after her acquittal, there were certainly those who sought her out. I would imagine that she received death threats or other kinds of threats after she was found not guilty by this jury. And so she indicated that that's part of what she wants to talk about in this Substack channel, is going through a situation and trying to maintain your privacy after something like this happens. Of course, in this case, she's not maintaining her privacy. She is once again putting herself in the public eye by putting these videos together and ultimately this social media Substack channel.
And just one last thing I want to ask you before we let you go. It just because it's something that she alluded to, the issues with her parents. Can you give us a little bit of the back and forth on that? I know it's probably a lot of dirty laundry for her, but she, opened the door for that. So what do you know of what all that is?
Well, let's take you back to the trial. Her defense attorney says Kaylee Anthony was not murdered. She drowned in the swimming pool. But they had to get over the fact that even if this child drowned in the swimming pool, her body was found in the woods several blocks away from the family's home. And at the time of the disappearance, or actually after the disappearance, Casey Anthony didn't report that her daughter was missing to law enforcement for about a month. It was actually her parents who reported it. And once law enforcement confronted her, Casey Anthony made up now what is admittedly a bogus story that she had taken her daughter to this fictitious babysitter, Zanny the nanny. And so that was very... the defense team knew going into this that no matter, even if they could show that there was no way to prove how Kaylee Anthony died and hence how Casey Anthony might be responsible, there was still this big ugly issue of why was Casey Anthony telling these lies to law enforcement. And so what the defense alleged was basically that Casey Anthony was abused as a child, sexually abused by her father. That came out in trial. Casey Anthony further went into more detail about it in that recent NBC Peacock documentary. George Anthony, her father, has adamantly denied this. He denied it when the trial was happening. He has gone on several talk shows and media publications in the decade and a half since, saying that this is totally made up by my daughter. This did not happen. But nonetheless, Casey Anthony has alleged that she was abused, molested by her father. And in this TikTok video that was posted over the weekend, she alluded to the fact that she would probably be discussing that in part in future publications of this newsletter.
Yeah, it is worth mentioning for people who are seeking out this TikTok video or her account. Comments have been turned off on this. No doubt it is would likely spark a bit of an internet firestorm if the comments were allowed. But, those looking to sound off would not have to look for other avenues for that. So it's going to be interesting to see what develops as Casey puts herself out there again and is opening herself up to, certainly her supporters and potentially her detractors as well.
And will she be able to reinvent herself? We have seen time and time again people accused of crimes who've either been found guilty or found not guilty, but still may have this shadow over them as they return to public life. Casey Anthony certainly did. Will she be able to turn that around using her own words? I would say after that documentary came out a couple of years ago on Peacock, some felt it did not do her any favors. For some, it reinforced their belief that she had something to do with her daughter's disappearance and death. But again, Casey Anthony insistent back then that she was not guilty of this crime. The jury found her not guilty, and I presume we will continue to hear more about that as she now takes on this very public life on social media.
It'll definitely be interesting to watch. I know that you'll be following right along as this all happens.
Not too closely, but I'll keep it on the background.
Yes, absolutely. We all have our limits. Mike, I know you've been following this for forever, so we appreciate your continued eyes on this, and thank you so much for your time today.
Take care.
All right. And that'll do it for us here on Take 6. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back on News 6 at 4. Jonathan Haggis will be in for Julie Broughton, covering the early forecast, and we hope to see you there. Thank you so much for your time, and have a pleasant day.